As rooted in love is the theme of our stewardship campaign this year, I've been thinking a lot about the roots of this particular church, the First United Congregational Church of Manhattan, Kansas. The Reverend Charles Blood delivered the first sermon about in this vicinity on April 22nd, 1855. The sanctuary was a tent, and a box was the lectern, and the people just sat on kegs and boxes, whatever they could find. From that day on, this church has been changing people's lives. On January 6th of 1856, 6 people gathered and effected the formal organization of this church. They adopted a constitution and a statement of faith. To build the church building, Reverend Blood went to St. Louis and he got $208 in subscriptions. That wouldn't even pay for anything now. And he went to Illinois and he got $990, and Abraham Lincoln gave him $5, and Stephen A. Douglas gave him $5. My husband and Ralph and I always belonged to a church from the time we were born, and our 2 girls were raised in a church. But for many reasons over the years, our church attendance faded. Julian Johnson, who was the pastor of this church for many years, was a very good friend of Ralph's, but we never talked about changing our church affiliation. When our daughter Rebecca died, Reverend Johnson and Dr. George Bascom, whose family had been in this church for generations, was with us at the hospital. Reverend Johnson did her memorial service, and over the next months, Julian and George spent a great deal of time with us talking through our grief, listening, crying, and even laughing. We should have joined this church then. When Victor Force became the pastor here, we at last joined. And someday, if you ask me, I'll tell you the funny story about first meeting Victor and why we joined this church. We already knew many of the people who made up this church, and it was like a homecoming. The welcome was incredible, and we happily joined in the work of the church. I am rooted in this congregation because I know that I can share in the important work of the church, and that there is always someone here who I can call on in need of help. One of the activities that Ralph enjoyed most about this church was being host at Second Helping. And as he faded into dementia, there was always a table of men at Second Helping who greeted him and included him in their important sense of togetherness. When he died, Pastor Kayla was at the hospital to share her faith. And for his memorial service, Pastor Sue and Paul Hunt and Bob Edwards and Mary Ellen Sutton from this church made it a celebration of his life. The roots of this church have made me stronger as I see how much we do together. We each do a lot on our own, but the roots of this church grow exponentially when we work together as a body to share the joy of giving. As an open and affirming congregation, we're always finding ways to share our message that all are welcome here, regardless of faith, sexual orientation, or race. We've spread our message with love through Second Helping, the Blessing Box, supporting the Poor People's Campaign, being a part of educational events and training on anti-racism, by participating in the Little Apple Pride event, by speaking up and working for city ordinances to provide public accommodations, housing, and employment for people of all genders. And another way is by going to the service of lament this afternoon for residential school members victims that this church is helping to provide. And one of the important things is we do provide a safe learning place for our children. Whenever you see them in here, you understand that. I've only touched on a few things that this church is all about. but I would like to add two more that are of great importance to me: the music and the preaching. Need I say more? I'm making a personal commitment to this church because its roots run deep from that first sermon of Reverend Blood in 1855 to July 24th, 1859, when Pioneer Hall was the first building in Manhattan dedicated to the worship of God. Those roots must be nourished so they continue to feed the hungry, care for the ill, educate our children, bring joy to our service to others, and bring peace to our souls. This church, we are of many hearts, one song, many hands, one church, one song of hope and transformation, bound by a covenant of love. I hope you will join me in pledging to our congregation this fall. With your support, our church shares God's love to all in need.
Thank you so much,